Rain had a way of making the city smell like secrets. Not the kind you could put in a locked drawer, the kind that dripped from the eaves, pooled in gutters, and clung to the air like perfume. Maria stood under the flickering sign of a cafe that had seen better decades. Her red coat, almost scandalously bright against the gray evening, was the sort of thing people noticed, even if they didn't want to. She liked that. Attention was a currency, and Maria had always been good at saving it up until the moment she needed to spend it. The waitress behind the counter didn't bother to greet her when she stepped inside. Good. Maria preferred it that way. A smile could be a distraction, and right now she needed focus. She took a seat at the far corner, the one with a view of both the entrance and the street beyond. A cracked leather menu lay on the table, but she didn't open it. She wasn't here for coffee. She was here for the man who was 5 minutes late. A small brass bell over the door jingled, and in he came. Tall, sharp suit, carrying the air of someone who thought he was much better at hiding than he really was. His eyes scanned the cafe, glancing past her twice before finally locking on her smile, the one that could either melt a heart or freeze it solid. "Maria," he said, sliding into the seat across from her, "you look like I have." "Exactly 7 minutes before the wrong people notice you came here," she interrupted smoothly. He froze. She could see the way his Adam's apple bobbed. Good. He was nervous. Nervous men told truths they shouldn't. Maria leaned in, lowering her voice so the hum of the rain would swallow it. "You brought it?" His hand slid under the table. For one wild second, she thought he might actually try to hand it over like they were in some dime-store spy novel. But no, he was smarter than that. A folded slip of paper emerged, damp from his palm, and landed between them. She didn't touch it, not yet. "Do you know what happens if you're wrong?" she asked softly. His lips parted, but no words came out. Maria smiled, that slow, dangerous smile that promised nothing and everything at once. From outside, headlights swept across the cafe window. A sleek black car pulled up, engine idling. The man's gaze darted to the glass. "They're here," he whispered. Maria finally reached for the paper. It felt heavier than it should, like all the trouble in the world had been folded into neat quarters. She stood, slipping it into her coat pocket. "Then I guess our time's up." By the time the men in dark suits stepped inside, Maria was gone, her red coat vanishing into the rain like a drop of blood in water. The next morning in Lysienne was like a painting, smudged at the edges, beautiful, but hiding imperfections in its brush strokes. The city woke slowly, light spilling over gilded rooftops and curling into narrow streets where the scent of fresh bread mingled with the perfume of blooming asters. Maria de Vera, however, was already awake long before the bells of Saint-Marcard chimed the 7th hour. She sat at her vanity, the large oval mirror catching her face in fractured reflections thanks to a hairline crack running through its glass. Her hand hovered over a bottle of lilac water before she set it down again. Too much fragrance would draw questions. Too little, and certain people might think she was distracted, and in this city, distraction was a weakness. The night before, she had found a message tucked into the folds of her crimson evening gown, a slip of vellum, no larger than a playing card, with 3 words written in a hurried hand. "The glass is breaking." She didn't know yet who had sent it, but she knew where to start looking. By the time she stepped out into the street, the mist had not yet lifted, and the cobblestones were slick under her leather boots. Her destination was the Velvet Lantern, a small cafe tucked between a pawn shop and an opera mask maker's workshop. It was the kind of place where secrets were served with the coffee, where the black lacquered tables absorbed whispered conversations. Before they could reach the door, inside the air was thick with the scent of cinnamon and something faintly metallic. A string quartet played softly in the corner, their music barely masking the murmurs of the clientele. Maria's eyes swept the room, sharp and calculating beneath the calm veneer of a polite smile. She spotted him immediately. Anton Vale, his sharp jaw, perpetually undone cravat, and a voice that could make promises sound like threats. He was seated near the back, swirling a glass of something that wasn't coffee. "Maria," he said, as though her name were an inside joke only he understood. "I hear you've been looking for me." She took the seat opposite him without asking, resting her gloved hands on the table. "Someone left me a warning," she said. 3 words. You wouldn't happen to know what they mean?" Anton smiled, but it didn't touch his eyes. In Lysienne, glass breaks in more ways than one. He leaned closer. Sometimes it's a window, sometimes a reputation, sometimes a life. Before she could press further, the sound of shattering porcelain cut through the cafe. A waitress had dropped a tray, and in the momentary commotion, Maria felt a piece of paper slip into her coat pocket. She kept her face still, but her pulse quickened. When she finally rose to leave, Anton was still watching her, a man who knew more than he was saying. Outside, she unfolded the paper. This time it wasn't 3 words. It was a name, and it was hers. The balcony of the Lunaris Hotel clung to the cliffside like it might fall into the dark ocean at any moment. Below, the waves slammed against the rocks with a kind of persistence Maria could respect, unyielding, no matter how many times they were broken. She swirled her wine lazily, letting the ruby liquid catch the reflection of the moon. Across from her sat Cassian Vey, a man who never seemed entirely present in the room, like half of him was somewhere else, or plotting to be. His silver cufflinks glinted whenever he raised his glass, and every movement felt deliberate. "You came to Adresta without telling anyone?" Cassian asked, leaning forward slightly. "That's bold, even for you." Maria smiled, but it was the kind that left people guessing whether it meant you're right or you're underestimating me. "Sometimes you have to step onto the board before anyone realizes the game has started," she replied. They spoke in half-truths, circling each other's words like fencers too polite to lunge. Cassian dropped a breadcrumb about an upcoming shipment, and Maria countered with a mention of friends in the Port Authority. Neither confirmed anything, but the tension between them suggested both already knew exactly what the other meant. A cold wind curled in from the sea, carrying with it the faint sound of a bell from the lighthouse far down the coast. Cassian's eyes flicked toward it for only a second, but Maria caught the shift. "You're expecting someone," she said, her tone light, but her gaze sharp. "And you're far too observant," he replied smoothly. "But you didn't come here to drink wine and admire the moon, Maria. What is it you really want?" Maria took a slow sip before answering. "Answers," she said softly, "and maybe a warning, depending on what I find." For a moment neither spoke. Then Cassian smiled, not kindly, not cruelly, but like a man holding a coin he hasn't decided which way to flip. "Well," he murmured, "I hope you're ready for both, because the tide is changing, and when it does, no one stays dry." Maria didn't flinch, but inside, a quiet alarm bell began to ring. Whatever Cassian was tangled in, it was already deeper than she'd imagined. And she had just stepped onto the board. The next morning, the Aurelia estate seemed to breathe differently. The air felt thicker, as though the walls themselves had absorbed the unease from last night's veiled conversations. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, but even that seemed muted, fractured into shards by the colored glass. Maria moved through the east corridor, her heels clicking in a rhythm far too loud for her liking. Every step echoed, chasing her like an impatient shadow. She had decided to take a detour to the library before meeting her mother for the midday tea, a small act of rebellion, or perhaps avoidance. Halfway down the corridor she heard it, a whisper, not the kind born of servants exchanging gossip, but something softer, closer. It coiled around her ears like silk thread. "You shouldn't have asked about him." Maria froze. The corridor was empty, so empty, in fact, she could see the dust motes dancing in the light, unbothered. She spun slowly, searching for the source, but The whisper was gone, replaced only by the quiet hum of the estate's old heating pipes. She continued on, pretending she hadn't heard it, but her pulse betrayed her calm facade. When she reached the library, she found the heavy double doors slightly ajar. Inside, the smell of old paper and varnished oak wrapped around her. Tall shelves loomed, packed with centuries of her family's curated knowledge, or secrets, depending on one's interpretation. In the far corner, the head librarian, Mr. Vale, was arranging books with surgical precision. "Looking for something particular, Miss Aurelia?" he asked without turning. "Yes," Maria replied, stepping deeper into the room. "Records from 20 years ago," he hesitated, just long enough for her to notice. Slowly he turned, his pale blue eyes carrying a glint she couldn't read. "Some records," he said carefully, "are better left undisturbed." Her lips curved into a polite smile, and yet those tend to be the most interesting. Before he could respond, a loud crash echoed from somewhere beyond the library, a sound like glass shattering. Maria and Mr. Vale locked eyes for a brief taut moment. Without another word, she slipped past him toward the source, her curiosity now far sharper than her caution. What she didn't notice, however, was the shadow that moved at the end of the hall, a figure that had been listening the entire time. Maria had been to her fair share of masquerade parties, but never one like this. The ballroom of the Montevero estate was soaked in gold light, with chandeliers dripping crystal rain onto marble floors. Hundreds of faces were hidden behind masks. Peacock, feathers, black lace, polished porcelain, making everyone simultaneously anonymous, and yet more scrutinized than ever. A string quartet played in the corner, its melody sweet, but with an undercurrent of tension, like a smile hiding a threat. Maria's mask was simple, black satin with a single silver teardrop painted beneath the left eye. She preferred to be the observer, not the spectacle, tonight. From her vantage point near the mirrored wall, she could see almost everything, especially the way certain masked guests kept circling each other like predators pretending to dance. Her mission wasn't to dance, it was to watch. She spotted him first, a tall man in a dark velvet mask, standing too still for someone in a party this lively. Every few minutes his hand drifted to the inside of his jacket, as though checking for something. A weapon? A letter? A key? Maria's instincts told her this was the man she'd been warned about, the one carrying the information no one was supposed to have. The problem was, she wasn't the only one watching him. Across the room, a woman in a blood-red gown traced the rim of her champagne flute, while her eyes, cold and unblinking, stayed fixed on him. Maria recognized her. Serafine Duval, the kind of woman who turned whispers into weapons and could make enemies disappear with a single favor called in. The man in the velvet mask finally moved, slipping out through a side door leading into the garden. Serafine waited a beat, then followed. Maria didn't hesitate. She wove through the crowd, her heels soundless against the marble, and slipped outside into the cool night air. The garden smelled of jasmine and secrets. She found them near the fountain, Serafine with her hand on the man's shoulder, her voice low but sharp. Maria edged closer, keeping to the shadows of the hedges, straining to hear. "You don't understand," the man was saying, his voice taut with urgency. "If it gets out, it will ruin all of them." Seraphine's lips curled. "That's the idea, darling." A sudden rustle in the hedges behind Maria made her turn, but before she could see who or what was there, a gloved hand clamped over her mouth. Maria's breath caught beneath the gloved hand, but she didn't. Panic. Panic was a luxury she couldn't afford, not with the stakes climbing higher with every second. Her green eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the darkness, and she realized the hand belonged to someone tall, strong, and surprisingly familiar. "Easy, Maria," a deep, amused voice murmured near her ear. "You're about to ruin the surprise." She twisted lightly, finally seeing Lauren Vey, an agent who had been shadowing the city's political games for longer than she cared to admit. His mask was black leather, molded perfectly to his angular face, and despite the darkness, she could see the faintest curve of a smile beneath it. "Surprise?" Maria hissed, still wary. "You scared me half to death." Lauren let go, but he didn't step back. "We don't have time for theatrics. Follow me. Quickly!" Before she could argue, he ducked into a narrow path between two towering hedges. Maria's red coat flashed in the moonlight, a warning beacon that she was neither fragile nor defenseless. She ran after him, boots hitting the damp cobblestones with quiet precision. The garden was a labyrinth of statues, fountains, and overgrown vines, each corner a potential trap. Maria's heart pounded, but her mind was already several steps ahead, calculating angles, escape routes, and threats. Somewhere ahead, Seraphine's laughter echoed, soft, dangerous, like a blade sliding across silk. "You're fast," Loren said over his shoulder, his breath steady. "But she's faster and clever." Maria smirked despite the tension. She doesn't know who she's dealing with. They reached a side arch leading into a deserted courtyard. Loren stopped and pressed Maria against the stone wall, his eyes scanning the shadows. From the corner of her eye, Maria caught a flicker of movement, a masked figure slipping silently among the statues. "Go!" Loren commanded, shoving her through the archway. Maria landed lightly on the other side, the gravel crunching under her boots. She pivoted and spotted a fountain at the center of the courtyard. Something gleamed beneath the moonlight, a small, intricate key, half buried in the stonework. Her fingers closed around it, but the moment she lifted it, a soft voice whispered. From behind, "You shouldn't have taken that." Maria spun, ready to confront the shadow, but found only the echo of her own heartbeat. Loren appeared beside her again, eyes narrowing. "We need to move. Now." And in that instant, Maria understood. The game had changed. The rules were shifting, the players were moving, and she wasn't just a pawn anymore. She was a piece that could tip the entire board. The corridor behind the Montavero Estates library smelled of dust and secrets. Maria held the small key tightly in her hand, the metal cool and oddly heavy, as if it carried the weight of generations. Loren had insisted they move quickly, but she couldn't resist the pull of curiosity. "Where does it fit?" she murmured, almost to herself, tracing the key's intricate etchings with a fingertip. Symbols intertwined, curling like vines, forming a pattern she felt she'd seen somewhere before. Loren's eyes flicked nervously over her shoulder. "We don't have time for puzzles, Maria. If Serafine realizes you have that, she already knows." Maria's voice was steady, even as a thrill ran through her. She had learned early that adrenaline sharpened her mind. "I just need to know how far she's willing to go." Their search led them to the northern wing of the estate, where the shadows were long and the air smelled of old stone and candle wax. Maria's fingers brushed against a wall panel slightly ajar, too perfectly aligned to be ordinary. "Try it," Loren whispered. She slid the key into the slot hidden behind the panel. It fit perfectly. The lock clicked, echoing like a small gunshot in the silence. With a gentle push, the panel swung open, revealing a hidden staircase spiraling downward into darkness. Maria paused. The air was damp, carrying the scent of earth and something metallic. Blood. She couldn't tell. Loren raised a hand in caution, but Maria stepped forward. The stairs led into a narrow tunnel, carved meticulously into the stone. Walls were lined with faded frescoes, depicting a city in ruin, masked figures, and women holding small, glowing objects that looked eerily like the key in her hand. She realized, with a shiver, that this tunnel had been designed for someone like her, clever, daring, and unafraid to follow shadows. A faint sound echoed from the end of the passage, footsteps deliberate and slow. Maria's heart beat faster, but she forced herself to remain calm, every nerve alert. "Who's there?" she called, her voice steady, carrying authority that belied her racing pulse. A figure stepped into the dim light. Serafine, wearing her crimson mask, her eyes glittering with amusement and malice. "Well, well," Serafine purred, "I wondered how long it would take you to find my little secret." Maria tightened her grip on the key. "I'm not here to play games, Serafine. Step aside." Serafine tilted her head. "Oh, but you are playing games, and you've just stepped into my board. Now, let's see if you can get out again." The shadow seemed to lengthen, pressing closer. Maria knew this wasn't just about the key anymore. It was about survival, cleverness, and the ability to outthink someone who had already anticipated her every move. And Maria had never lost a game she intended to win. The tunnel opened into a cavernous chamber carved from raw stone, its walls glinting with veins of metallic mineral that caught the torchlight in flickering patterns. Maria's heart pounded in her chest, not from fear but anticipation. Every step she took echoed like a drumbeat announcing her arrival. Lauren stayed close, his presence both comforting and tense. The chamber was not empty. At its center stood a pedestal, upon which rested an ancient device, gleaming, intricate, and humming with a faint blue light. Maria instinctively knew it was the source of the key's power. Symbols similar to those etched on the key adorned its surface, twisting in patterns she could feel more than see. "This is it," Loren whispered, his voice low. "Whatever this is, it's why Serafine has been following you. This could change everything." Maria knelt before the pedestal, slipping the key into a hidden slot. It fit with a satisfying click. Immediately, the device sprang to life. Holographic projections erupted into the air, painting a three-dimensional map of Lysienne, and beyond it, 6 other estates scattered across distant regions. "The 7 houses," Maria breathed, "each controlling part of the city, part of the world." From the shadows, Seraphine's voice slithered across the chamber. "You're clever, I'll give you that, but not clever enough." Maria spun, key still in hand, and saw Serafine emerging from behind a jagged stone pillar, her crimson gown glowing faintly in the holographic light. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, never left Maria's. "You think finding the key gives you power?" Serafine continued, stepping closer. "This device, it's been dormant for centuries. It chooses who can wield it, and it doesn't choose you." Maria's lips curved into a small, dangerous smile. "Perhaps. Or perhaps it just hasn't met someone clever enough to make it work." The chamber seemed to vibrate with tension as they circled each other, 2 predators gauging advantage. Maria's green eyes flicked from Serafine to the holographic projections. Patterns emerged, hidden channels, secret corridors, weak points in the estate's defenses. She understood in an instant that this was more than a key. It was a game board, and Maria intended to move first. "Lauren," she whispered, barely audible over the hum, "watch the side passage." "She'll try to flank us." He nodded, already positioning himself. Seraphine's grin widened as though she had expected Maria to hesitate. Then, in a flash, she lunged, not toward Maria, but toward the pedestal. Maria reacted instinctively, pivoting and twisting the key. The device emitted a pulse of light, sending Serafine stumbling backward. "This isn't over," Serafine hissed, her voice dripping with both fury and amusement. "And when the others find out what you've touched, you won't last the week." Maria held her ground, her pulse steady, the glow of the holograms reflecting off her red coat and sharp green eyes. "Let them come," she said softly, "because I intend to be ready." And for the first time, Maria realized the game had changed completely. She wasn't just defending herself anymore. She was on the brink of controlling everything. The morning after the chamber encounter, Lysienne streets seemed unnervingly quiet. Maria moved through them with a calm that belied the storm of thought swirling in her mind. Word of the device, whether by rumor, intuition, or Seraphine's own warnings, was spreading faster than she had anticipated. By noon, emissaries from 2 of the other 6 houses arrived, their carriages rolling through the gilded gates of her estate. They were dressed impeccably, masks of civility hiding intent, sharpened like knives. Maria's green eyes studied them. From the balcony, each movement, each gesture, each subtle glance catalogued like pieces of a puzzle. One of the emissaries, Lord Halvran, approached the main hall with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Queen Maria," he said, bowing slightly, "we've heard unusual rumors about your recent activities. The device, I presume?" Maria's lips curved. "Rumors often exaggerate. But tell me, Lord Halvran, have you ever played a game of chess?" His brow furrowed. "Of course." "Then you know," she said, stepping closer, "that the first move is always the easiest. The real challenge is anticipating every counter, every trap, every hidden piece. And I intend to play carefully." The second emissary, a woman with raven-black hair and eyes as cold as steel, leaned forward. "And yet," she said, "you activated something centuries old without consulting the others. That is reckless, dangerous, perhaps even provocative." Maria tilted her head, letting a strand of fiery red hair catch the sunlight. "Provocation can be a useful tool," she said, "but danger is only what you make of it. I've already seen who can wield fear as a weapon. I've learned quickly who relies on it and who relies on skill." The emissaries exchanged a glance, silent, sharp, assessing. They could see she was not bluffing. Just then, a faint vibration ran through the floor, a pulse that Maria felt in her chest more than heard. The device had activated more fully than she anticipated. Holographic channels glimmered faintly through her mind's eye. Trade routes, hidden corridors, escape routes, information previously buried beneath centuries of secrecy. Loren appeared at her side, voice low. "They'll know soon that it's active, and when that happens, the 6 houses won't come with words, they'll come with force." Maria's lips pressed together, a calculating smile forming. "Then we'll need more than words to stay ahead. We'll need leverage, allies, and perhaps a few carefully planted distractions." At that moment, a whisper of movement in the courtyard drew her attention. Serafine. She was there again, shadowed, glinting crimson beneath the sun, watching Maria as though daring her to make a mistake. Maria's pulse quickened, but not with fear, with excitement. The board had expanded, the pieces were moving, and Maria had just realized that she could bend the rules, not just play them. This was no longer merely survival. This was dominion. The sun dipped low over Lysienne, casting elongated shadows across the grand halls of Maria's estate. The city outside buzzed with rumors, each whisper a thread in a web of uncertainty. Maria moved through the halls like a conductor of invisible strings, her green eyes scanning every portrait, every candle, every servant's careful steps. Loren met her at the east wing staircase. "They're mobilizing," he said, voice low. "The other houses, half of them are sending envoys, half soldiers." Maria didn't flinch. Instead, she let a small, knowing smile touch her lips. "Then it's time we pick our allies. Not friends, mind you. Allies. Convenient, loyal only to the cause, and replaceable, if necessary." They entered the council chamber, a room built to impress and intimidate. Marble floors reflected the amber light of the setting sun, while towering windows framed the city beyond. She had called a select few trusted contacts, people whose ambition matched hers, or whose caution made them predictable. The first to arrive was Lady Visara, a cunning merchant queen from the southern trade districts. She bowed, her mask catching the light with every movement. "I understand you've obtained something extraordinary, Maria," Lady Visara said, voice smooth, "and you intend to use it against the 6 houses." Maria inclined her head slightly. "I intend to survive, and if I survive, I intend to thrive. You can help, or you can watch." A murmur of acknowledgment ran through the room. Eyes met. Hers with curiosity, some with greed. She didn't need friends, she needed pawns. and perhaps a few queens who knew when to strike. Lauren, standing near the door, leaned close. "What about Serafine?" he asked. "She's already making her move, positioning her pieces. One wrong step—" "One wrong step," Maria interrupted, letting her voice tighten with steel. "And she will find that I've anticipated her. We don't react to threats. We predict them, bend them, and use them." The meeting concluded with careful arrangements. Trade routes shifted subtly. Couriers moved under false pretenses, and agents were deployed into positions Maria herself had mapped from the chamber's holograms. Each action a chess piece in motion, each whisper a tool of influence. That night, Maria walked alone on the balcony, the wind tugging at her red cloak. The city lay beneath her, sprawling and alive, unaware of the subtle manipulation steering its fate. From the shadows of the nearby tower, Serafine watched. Her smile was sharp, calculating. "You may have started the game, Maria," she whispered to herself, "but the pieces are moving, and some of them belong to me." Maria, feeling the cool night air on her face, didn't know she was being watched, but she had already prepared for it. Every ally had been tested, every route examined. Her pulse was steady, her mind alive with strategies. This was no longer survival. This was conquest, and Maria was ready to play. The estate had grown unnervingly quiet by midnight, the usual hum of servants and guards replaced by a tense stillness. Maria sensed it before she saw it, the subtle shift in the air, the barely audible brush of fabric against stone, the glint of something that didn't belong. "Serafine," Maria whispered, her green eyes narrowing. She moved like a shadow herself, feet silent against the polished marble. Lauren appeared behind her, blade faintly glowing in the dim light. "They're testing us," he said. "Small moves first. Probes. Nothing major yet." Maria's lips pressed together. She had anticipated exactly this. Serafine would strike soon, testing her alliances, her guards, her very resolve. The question was, how deep did Seraphine's reach go? A sudden noise from the east wing, a crashing of glass. A muffled shout spurred Maria into action. She darted toward the sound, Lysienne at her heels. The grand hall, usually bathed in the soft glow of chandeliers, was now a stage of chaos. Two of her trusted agents lay incapacitated, a subtle poison in their drinks, another, unconscious, on the floor, his mask knocked askew. From the shadows, Serafine emerged, crimson gown flowing, her mask catching the glint of torchlight like a warning. "Ah, Maria," she purred, each step deliberate. "I hoped you'd see the first wave. Consider this, an appetizer." Maria assessed quickly, the key in her pocket, the device in the hidden chamber, her remaining loyal agents, and the network of allies she had begun to orchestrate. Every move had been calculated, yet Seraphine's strike had introduced a variable she hadn't fully predicted. "Lysienne," Maria said, voice sharp. "We lure her to the north gallery. I have a surprise waiting." Lauren nodded, already leading the remaining guards into positions. Maria's heart beat steadily, but her mind raced through contingencies, escape routes, and countermeasures. Every shadow could hide a threat, and every step could be a trap. They reached the gallery, where a series of mirrored panels reflected the candle light. Maria motioned, and the mirrors shifted with hidden levers, creating a maze-like illusion. Serafine, overconfident, entered first, thinking Maria trapped her, unaware that the maze was rigged to disorient and delay. Maria's laugh was low, a mixture of amusement and triumph. "You underestimated me," she murmured. Again. From the shadows, Maria's agents emerged, blocking Seraphine's flanks while Lauren approached from behind. The fight was silent, precise, and controlled. No unnecessary violence, only strategic containment. Serafine realized the trap too late. The maze closed around her, leaving her contained, frustrated but not defeated. "You may win tonight," she hissed, "but the war is far from over, Maria. Far from over." Maria stepped back, the device's holographic glow faintly illuminating her face. Her red hair shimmered like fire in the dim light, her green eyes sharp and alive. She allowed herself a small, victorious smile. "The war," she said softly, "is exactly where I want it, on my terms." And in the shadows beyond the gallery, new players were already moving, drawn to the pulse of the device, the ripples of Seraphine's attack, and the scent of ambition that Maria exuded effortlessly. The board had expanded again, but Maria, she was ready.